Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of Facts and Realities of Education. Today in the program, we will be talking about remedial classes. We are aware of the fact that the teaching-learning process is the work of human hands, which is hardly perfect. So the teachers always do all to transmit what they know to their learners, but it would happen that that has never been perfect or the way they would have loved to do it. That is why there is a need for remedial classes, or what some other people call it, catch-up classes. In this edition of the program, we would be talking about remedial classes and its importance in the teaching-learning process. With me in the studio here is an inspector of education in the Archdiocese of Douala, Mr. Ayongi Luciano. Please, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Venasius. Good evening, and good evening, dear televiewers, especially viewers of DBS television.
Thank you. We begin straight away by looking at what these remedial classes are. What do we mean by remedial classes?
Actually, when you get into the etymology of the word remedial, it's coming from remedy. And remedy has to do with salvaging a kind of apparently deploring situation. So remedial classes within the context of pedagogy and education has to do with lessons that are organized out of the normal school timetable.
Normal school program.
Normal school program. Maybe with the purpose of helping a category of learners whom we call in the pedagogic language slow learners, to maybe meet up to standards, up to expectation. It comes as a result of a lesson having maybe been delivered in class, and the learners have not kind of mastered or attained set objectives of the lesson. So the teacher maybe find himself in a professional obligation to organize such remedial classes or remedial lessons.
From a long distance, if we look at it, then when we talk of remedial classes, what comes to mind should be slow learners. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. How is it organized?
Now, when we want to go into how it is organized, the first thing is that the teacher kind of looks at his program, what his timetable allocates to him as the teaching or working or interactive period with the learners. Now, to organize remedial lessons, it is just but factual that it cannot go again within that stipulated time by the timetable. He has to go out of that period,
out of the official
period. Because in the classroom, we will not only have but slowly have those who are achievers, who acquire very fast, and you go to organize remedial lessons for them, it kind of be a tautology or a waste of time. So to organize remedial lessons, we go out of the time and look at the convenience of the teacher and the learners.
The convenience. Now, how do they organize it now? You will not divide the class into slow learners and the word that you have used here, achievers. So we organize it for slow learners. And then when we do it at that point, how do you do it? Do you have a kind of a different program that you are using, or do you take each slow learner and you treat each slow learner or how do you handle them?
It comes, first of all, as you rightly asked, from the organization. The organization kind of now move you into the program. Now, when we want to talk of organization, first of all, we acknowledge here the fact that some people, especially now we are bringing in the parents into the game, who are, because they are also part of the educative community. There is always this mix up that I would like to clarify here between what we call, the Frenchman calls it coup de répétition, where a parent comes and gets a teacher to maybe follow up again the child at home, be it a slow learner or an achiever, and purely remedial lessons that are purported for slow learners. Now, when we come to that level, they kind of be an individual organization or a collective organization. For example, I'm a teacher, you are a parent. You come and see me to follow up your child at home. That one does not really fall 100% in within the context of remedial lessons, because your child might happen to be an achiever, but you just want to improve on the standards. When we talk of remediation, we really target those who are really underachievers. And now that one can be a collective kind of affair whereby the teacher could organize in the school preferably, and maybe come to agreement with taking into consideration the realities of the
learners
or of the milieu in which we find ourselves. Maybe a city setup,
like in Douala,
where maybe children have a stipulated time where they have to come and fetched from school. The teacher could maybe enter into contact with the parents and agree with them, because of this and this and this, I want to, instead of coming to fetch your child maybe at 2:30, you could come maybe an hour later, because I want to organize some remedial lessons with it. But at individual level, you see, mostly you find teachers who follow children maybe in their homes, and that one is a kind of it's a different ball game between the teacher and the parents.
Okay, so the question of remedial classes and repetition, or what the Frenchman call coup de répétition, those are, or what we call extra classes, those are two different things,
pedagogically speaking,
depending on the class of learners that we have.
Although the what we call the repetition class or coup de repetition could still have a remedial character, whereby a parent also thinks that instead of allowing the child to do remediation at home, maybe I can bring somebody to closely follow the child up at home.
All right.
But from conception, there are two different programs.
All right. Before we get into how this remedial classes is being carried out in terms of the documents used, the scheme, the program, let's try to get something. Is there a class that we use for remediation? Is there a class? Can we say which class can these remedial classes should begin from? I mean, is it from primary class 1 to 6, secondary? Is there any?
We acknowledge the fact that there are slow learners in every class,
levels,
and the target of education today, we target lessons today, we target full attainment of lesson objectives. We don't want to move ahead and leave one learner behind. So if you discover as a conscientious teacher that you even have in a class of maybe 60, you have just 2 who are slow learners, you have a professional and a moral obligation to
organize,
to remediate.
Okay.
And when you even go to lesson preparation and presentation now, there is a stage there for remediation, yes, but it could still appear not to be insufficient depending on the particular cases that you might find in your classroom.
Okay, let's get into how it is carried out now. We look at because this is school after school, or classes after classes. How is it done? Do you have a special document to use, a special scheme, or do you still use the same scheme? What has it done? If
we should go to be using a different documents or this or scheme or that, it will be a separate school out of the normal school. But we say remediation is like helping slow learners to come up to the standard of others. So it is the same program. Maybe what can vary here now can be the teacher's methods and all the time, the methodology and particularly the teacher's method.
Okay. I am not putting the integrity of the teacher here to question, but before we get to who initiates the class, I want to find out if I start telling a child 1 + 1 is 2, and the child is not getting it, and I know another method to use. Why not use it in class? Why must I keep it to remediate after?
If you could do it, and attain your lesson objectives at 100% by the end of your lesson, you do your kind of summative evaluation and realize that your objectives have been fully attained, you have no obligation to do remediation. We say remediation comes in only when you realize that some of your learners are not up to the expected standard as far as the particular lesson is concerned.
Okay. When I'm talking of who brings up the idea of initiation, you realize that some of us parents, we like force teachers. This is like in a town like Douala, your standard of living is, is being measured by how much you follow up your children in terms of these remedial classes. Who initiated? Is it the teacher who goes towards a parent that I need to remediate with this your child, or the parent comes to the teacher that I want this my child to have remedial classes?
When we want to talk about initiation of remedial classes, I would like to first of all draw our attention to the fact that according to the stipulation of the ministerial arrêté number 02/07/Minedup/Minsec of the 17th of July 2017, that was kind of fixing the annual calendar for the academic year. When you go to it, chapter 3, article 7, you are going to realize there that the ministers were very clear that within every sequence, there are kind of activities that should be organized within every sequence.
At the end of the sequence?
Within the sequence, from start of sequence to the end of sequence, the type of activities that should be organized, amongst which is remediation. So at level of initiation, we want to acknowledge here that remedial classes already have a kind of ministerial ordination.
An official recognition.
An official recognition by according to the stipulation of this ministerial arrêté. Now, when we want to come to the practicality of the whole game, you know, the teacher diagnoses a problem as far as remedial lessons is concerned. He does the diagnosis and he discovers the need to remediate. He could organize remediation, collective remediation in his classroom. But what happens here now is, you know, education, especially within the town of Douala and maybe in other most cities that we know, had become kind of very competitive, whereby a parent whose child today is third always wants the child tomorrow to be first. Therefore, whether the parent goes to the teacher or the teacher diagnoses a situation and reports to the parent, because in the education process of the child, there is need for that teacher-parent collaboration and relationship. So the teacher makes a diagnosis and reports to the parent in all sincerity and honesty. This is the situation of your parent. If it's an honest parent, the parent, bon, what do we do to salvage the situation? I am organizing remedial lesson. But the danger here is whether when we have some recalcitrant teachers or some parents, they kind of take the concept of financing the whole thing and bring it into the ball game, which spoils it and makes the concept of remedial lesson to lose its image and value.
That is where I was going to come in here, because if remediation is a professional obligation, where should money come in here? Or why should money come in here? Why should there be a fee? Because what we parents seem to understand is teachers can come to us and they call you on telephone and tell you your child needs remediation classes. Before you realize, they tell you at the end of the month will be 15,000 or 5,000. So we don't know. If it is an obligation, the school fee does it not handle that?
I want to think that a teacher who calls a parent and imposes remediation for the sake of payment is kind of manifesting what I call some professional recalcitrance. It's professional recalcitrance. A teacher diagnoses the need for remediation, does his remediation within his convenience, as we say. But one thing we must also not rule out here is the teacher, after normal closing time, the teacher's time is personal. There are also issues that we don't rule out. His time is personal. So it is a sacrifice on his part to organize remediation, whereby a conscientious parent should also, humanly speaking, recognize that this teacher is making extra sacrifice.
And needs some
if
motivation.
You feel to motivate, it's well and good in an ideal educational situation and setting. But now what happens here is teachers know that I go to classroom from 7:30 to 2:30. After 2:30 is my personal time, and with the town of Douala being what it is,
to make
the cost of living, making ends meet, and also with the condition of the teacher that I will not live here without maybe underlining it, it pushes teachers. Actually,
when we say conditions of the teachers, let's be explicit here. We are in facts and realities. Conditions of payment, salary. Yes, their salary, their pay packages, which are low. So that may be another factor that push them to overlook this professional obligation and look at it in terms of money. Now, but we want to find out if we understand that remediation is helping the child come to a level. Is my child who did not understand subtraction in mathematics, is it logical that the same child will not understand multiplication in the next subject, in the next lesson? Because what I understand now in what we see in our schools is children who are being taken for remedial classes after normal periods they may do like that for the whole year. Is it that they are dull in all the lessons that they cannot catch up? Because I should think if you should remediate only in subtraction, when we are coming to multiplication, maybe my child may be able to catch up. So what happens in this case now, where those particular children, they are the same children who go for classes, for extra classes throughout the whole year after school?
One thing we must not rule out here is my experience has also taught me that in most cases, some parents, I don't know how they understand this concept of, now you call it extra classes.
Yes, we call it extra because, anyway, it's my own appellation.
I understand.
Extra because it is after classes.
Talking from the field, I understand what you mean.
Yes.
Some parents, I had, for example, when my first 2 years of teaching, I taught in one school in Bonamusadi, you know. I had parents who came to make sure their children are registered for extra classes, not remedial classes. Extra classes. One, for the purpose of accommodating the children after school.
Okay.
You get the point?
Yes.
Accommodating the children after school.
So that you could extend classes until they leave
Keep
work.
the children, they leave work and come and pass and pick.
Yes.
Secondly, some just take pride in the fact that, as they will say, je paye le coût de répétition.
Okay.
But then when we come to some, take also, maybe you come for the purpose of, my child is third, I want the child to be first. I don't know how they understand the whole thing.
Okay.
But all in all, it does not rule out the fact that remedial lessons are of prime importance when and where necessary.
Okay. So it is a call for parents to also understand that it is not, a school is not saving like it is saving like keeping your child, so that when you close, you should come and take, so that you use style and call it coup de repetition, just because you want the child to remain in school. But all we want to highlight here is it is for pedagogic reasons, or it is a pedagogic obligation for teachers to remediate. Okay, now let's look at how important it is, because from what we have been saying, let us bring out the importance clearly. How important is it? Is it a vital part of formation?
If we have been following ourselves from, first of all, from definition, we then understand we cannot but draw conclusions about the importance of remediation. From start, we say remediation targets slow learners. Now, if we want to look at the importance for the learner, for the teacher, and maybe for the parents.
Okay. Yeah, well, let's begin with the learner. Since we are learner-centric, we look at how important it is for the learner.
To the learner, the importance indubitably is when the remedial lessons are well handled, the level of the learner is raised. Because he has the opportunity, our experience, the type of children we have today, they believe so much repetition becomes another source of knowledge. I don't know whether we can now take it into a world of epistemology. That is it. Say another source of knowledge becomes repetition.
Yes.
Because experience is proving us that you take something today, you do the same thing tomorrow. The child who did not pick it
should at least.
Once you come, we bring it over and over. The child maybe could grasp a bit. So importance to the learner is it helps the child, at least, especially the slow learners, to improve a bit on their standards.
And then to the teacher.
To the teacher, a conscientious teacher who organizes remedial lesson, first of all, for me, I recommend that you do a kind of autocritique. I delivered this lesson and I did not attain my lesson objectives.
Yes.
Why? What cause of the non-attainment is coming from me? Is it the way I delivered the lesson? Is it the way I prepared? Did I use suitable teaching aids? All those type of things. So if a teacher does that kind of autocritique before organizing remedial lessons, that type of teacher will no doubt in the course of the remedial lesson improve on his or her method, or vary the method of teaching. I took this topic, I handled it this way. I found out that the objectives were not met. So I take the same topic now. Let me vary a bit my method. I adopt this type of method. So the importance of the teacher is, it helps. The importance to the teacher is now the remedial lesson will now also help the teacher, one, to get in touch and get a sound mastery of his classroom, upgrade the standard of his classroom, and upgrade and improve his or her own professional self.
Okay. All right. Now, let's look at the parent now. What has it got to do with the parent?
Every good parent or every parent will now glory in the fact that as a result of this, my child has improved.
Okay. Now,
and as I was outlining, there are some also who say, remedial lessons, keep them there while I come back from work, you know.
Okay. Now, let's
help us discipline the children at least for some time, you know, because we must not rule out the fact that some children are more than their parents to discipline, and they count very much on the.
But it's true. Experience has always proven that children tend to be obedient towards their teachers than to their parents, because, like they say, familiarity breeds contempt. Now, let's look at this. Is the work of human hands. What are the limitations? What are the dangers of this remediation? Are they?
There is no coin with one side. You know?
Of course. Of course.
There is no coin with one side. In as much as remedial classes or remediation has its advantages, it could also have its shortcomings.
Limitations, yes.
The first shortcoming, you know, you find an infant, level 1 pupil, class 1 and 2, who is in school from 7:30 to 2:30.
Yes.
Humanly speaking, by 2:30 that child should already be tired.
Of course.
And when you come with the concept of remediation, if you are not very professional and conscious of certain and sensitive to certain things,
yes,
you realize that during remediation the child will sleep.
You're wasting your time. Okay.
So you need to be so professional. You need to know how to motivate.
Okay.
They come the concept,
keep the child alive.
Yeah. To keep it kind of animate your class, to motivate the children in order to keep them alive for remedial lessons. If not, it becomes it becomes boring.
Okay.
Secondly, the child still flowing from the ball, you know, kind of friend man would say surchargé, overloaded. Overloaded with so much work for the day. So much so that you begin to think of the cognitive abilities of the child. Can the cognitive ability of the child sustain what you give in the course of the day and what you give during a remedial lesson? If not, it might appear to be a waste of time.
Okay.
We come also to the level of the teacher, you know. It enters into his personal time, and as we were saying, I wanted to bring this concept of working conditions of the living conditions of a teacher.
Yes.
You agree with me here? You find in schools here, especially lay private school, teachers who are working 8 hours and the whole month, and they have 50,000 as a salary.
Okay. In Douala.
Out of the 50,000, the teacher is expected to pay rent, feed his family, pay transport to school,
and then have something to
save.
Yes.
We are not talking of medication here. We are not talking of clothing and maybe helping a family or this is, you know. We are Africans, and you know what? In the village they say our uncle is in Douala.
Yes.
When there's a funeral, somebody dies in the village, they don't start thinking of where the position of the grave. They say the uncle is in Douala.
Yes.
So that's our thing. So that when you look at the conditions, you find out that teachers also find themselves in an economic and social obligation of managing their time, their personal time, for other things, be it now extra classes or other businesses. So when we come in with the concept of collective remedial classes, it plays on the teacher's maybe personal time he could have used to improve on his own well-being. Bon, there we appeal to and acclaim, not appeal, we acclaim the sense of professional consciousness and duty consciousness of most of our teachers who go extra mile to do the sacrifice despite all these situations, to allocate at least an hour or two to remediate with the pupils. But the one and very dangerous remedy, especially when we're talking about catch-up classes, I move a bit maybe to colleges and this. Now GCE is going on, you know.
That is it.
In the evenings you hear catch-up
classes.
Yeah. Remedial, you call it remedial catch-up or whatever. Those are where we find the dangers of most examination leakages.
Okay.
Because you go, for example, Cameroon, you know how connected everybody is. Some people see they have the exams, they organize and go and give. in the name of speculation.
Yes.
The students will call it speco. Speco, come and give us speco.
Yes.
They pay 500, 1,000 per evening. And you find children rushing to go and pay.
Instead of studying.
Instead of something is wrong somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't discredit those classes, but I simply appeal to a sense of honesty and sincerity.
Okay.
On both parts.
All right. Now, we are trying to, we are about rounding up because of time constraint. But before we go then, I want us to find out, given the importance of this, if we were to talk to parents, what would you tell parents in relation to these remedial classes?
In summary form, as an educator and at the same time a parent, what I would tell parents is summarily cooperate with your teacher and listen to what the teachers tell you, because the teacher is the pedagogic and educational advisor to you.
Okay. The teacher is the pedagogic
and educational
advisor
to the parent.
To the parent. I think that is to the parent, and that is the word we would be concluding this edition of the program today. But then we would want to let the teachers know that if they handle their professional obligation with seriousness and keep the dignity of the profession, parents will respect you for the enormous sacrifices you are doing. Of course, it is sacrifices because we parents at times tend to abuse this sacrifice. It is on that note that we will be coming to the end of this edition of the program, while thanking the inspector who took time off his busy schedule to be with us here, and we will pray your indulgence that you will still make time to be with us here for some other burning issues in our educational milieu. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with that that we come to the end of this edition. We will be back again next week for another edition. Until then, good night. Good night, sir.
Yes.